So welcome everyone to our final Science Education Department seminar series for this semester. Today is a special seminar with our student researchers. Just a couple of things, and I'm going to hand it off to Gerhard Sonnert. If possible, if you could leave cameras on for our speakers to be able to see who they're talking to, and if you can mute during their presentations. We have 3 different wonderful presentations today, and each about 15 minutes. So if you want to hold your questions or post them in the chat, we'll do questions at the end of each presentation. And then we'll have time, a couple questions at the end of each presentation, and we'll have time for more questions at the very end. So we want to thank everybody for being here. I want to acknowledge Drs. Raju Wu and Ting Reed as co-chairs of the SED seminar, and Wendy Berland, who manages the logistics and gets the word out for us. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Gerhard Sonnert, and welcome everybody.
Thank you, Cindy, and good morning, everyone. I'm Gerhard Sonnert, and together with Phil Sadler, I have been running the Science Education Research Group. In this group, we typically hire master's students from our education school at the beginning of the academic year in September, and then we spend the whole year on teaching the students all phases of writing a peer-reviewed research article, from choosing an appropriate topic through literature review and statistical analysis to writing up the manuscript. Our postdoctoral fellows play a critical role in this process. They intensively mentor the students and guide them all the way along the way toward completion of their project. This year, we have 2 really excellent postdocs who will each introduce their mentees' presentation. First, there is Rongju Wu. Dr. Wu received a PhD in quantitative and psychometric methods in educational psychology from the University of Kentucky. She is currently a postdoctoral researcher with us, and her interests include large-scale assessment, computer science and STEM education, multi-level analysis, and item response theory. The other postdoc is Ting Reed. Dr. Reed holds a bachelor's degree in English literature from Wuhan University of Technology. She then received both an MED and PhD in educational psychology from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, with specialties in multi-level modeling, structural equation modeling, and psychometric analysis. And she's now also a postdoctoral fellow with us since last September. Dr. Wu, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sonnert, for your introduction. Yiping and I have been working on the role model study since the last semester. As Dr. Sonnert just introduced, She's one of our policy members within the Science Education Department at the Center of Astrophysics. And I believe Yiping have just got a master in the science in the education department at Harvard, and she also, congratulations, Yiping. And she also had a master of science in aerospace engineering from the University of Manchester. With extensive experience teaching STEM disciplines in China, her research is presently focused on analyzing the influence of role models on the perseverance of students in STEM domains. So without further ado, I will turn the stage to Yiping.
Hi everyone, I'm Yiping, and just to say that I do graduate from the on the 23rd of May, so fingers crossed, I'm getting that. And let me start sharing the screen. Is the screen sharing? Yeah, okay, so I'll start. Hi everyone, I'm Yiping, and thank you, Rongju, for the kind introduction. It is my honor to discuss my research with you all today. The research topic I'm working on is the influence of computer science role models with corresponding gender and race ethnicity on students' career interest in computer science. Let's start by outlining the agenda. I'll be walking through the research questions methodology, results, and a discussion based on those results. Starting with the research questions, I have been curious about role models who are different from teachers, tutors, and mentors. The students do not necessarily know them in person. They are more likely to be a figure that students look up to. And my main focus is to study their influence on students' career interest in computer science. So what motivated this research? I mean, besides simply being a part of the awesome policy team. So first, according to Palette, well, there's a high demand for computer science professionals. The field remain to be have a low diversity, highlighting the urgent need to enhance the representation. Secondly, O'Brien argues that role models who share the similar backgrounds with the students can be a great positive influence for students' sense of belonging in STEM fields and are great breaking the negative stereotypes. Despite these acknowledgements, there is a significant gap in evidence supporting the impact of role models with matching gender, race, and ethnicity on students' career interest. I guess we all say it is good, but we don't know how good, and we don't know if it's actually good, supporting by evidence. So the research aimed to address a central question of how do role models sharing students' gender or race and ethnicity influence career interest in computer science. And two main aspects were investigated. The first is, do role models who match students in gender and ethnicity significantly influence the career interest compared to who those do not match? And the second is, can role models lacking congruence still significantly improve the students' career interest? And now let's explore the methodology used in this study. We utilized a survey called PICS, which stands for Pre-existence in Computer Science, which contains questions about students' pre-college computer science experience based on the review of relevant literature, survey of scaffolders, like for example, teachers, and the survey of young CS professionals. It was piloted tested first, and then distributed to first-year students in compulsory classes across a random sample of 2-year and 4-year institutions. The final sample included data of 6,044 students taught by 210 instructors across 55 institutions nationwide. The institutions were carefully chosen to represent a diverse set of educational environment across the whole country. The distribution of these institutions were as among 2-year institutions, there were 12 large, 7 medium, and 5 small ones. And for the 4-year institutions, there were 19 small, 7 medium, and 8 large ones. To dive deeper in the survey content, I focused on the key question in the survey of question 26, which asked the students if they had a computer science role model, and if so, identify the characteristic of these role models. Question 38 and 40 gathered demographic information, specifically on students' race and ethnicity and gender. And also question 1, which asked about students' career aspiration from the beginning of middle school through high school and into college. I focused on 6 careers relevant to computer science in this question, from computer scientists to computer artists as shown. And comparing the career interest of them from high school to the start of college. I have used these questions to achieve the variables as shown here. The first is the dependent variable. The dependent variable was career interest in computer science at the beginning of college. And the independent variable I used was the levels of role model matching, broken down into 5 groups, no role model at all. And to see how well the role model's gender and race ethnicity match with the students' race and ethnicity, I used the previous mentioned questions and I had another 4 level, which is role model without matching gender or race ethnicity at all, role models matching only gender, role models matching only race and ethnicity, as well as the role models mapping both gender and race and ethnicity. I also consider the confounding variable of the student's career interest in computer science at the beginning of high school. To account for missing data, I used the random forest method, multiple imputation in R, to generate a more complete data set, and then applied logistic regression to assess the impact of role model matching on students' odds ratio of pursuing computer science career at the beginning of college, which is a binary. We coded the data collected, so the sample was grouped by gender and race ethnicity. And since the other category and the gender was too small for statistical significance compared to the other two groups, I focused on 10 groups, combining the intersection of male, female, and the 5 racial groups, which was white, Black, Hispanic, Asian, and other. And now let's look at some exciting results. First, I analyzed the percentage of students who had role models match with their gender or race ethnicity. As in here, most of students actually did not have a role model at all, which was the light gray bar. But those who did often find role models sharing their identities. And let's take a closer look at the top part. There are students had role models, and please note the legends here. The dark gray ones means the students had a role model, but the role model had no match in either their gender or race and ethnicity. Blue and yellow with the one-directional stripes are the gender or with ethnicity matching role models. And the green crosses ones are role models with both match. Among them, most of the students actually sought role models who reflected their identities, particularly the white males, who are more likely to find such congruence. In contrast, white females struggled a little bit to find role models who match their gender, which actually exposing the general gender gap across the whole demographic in the particular area of computer science. Among these, Asian males, given their prevalence in the field, easily find role models that match their identities, while the Asian female had a little greater challenges. And noticeably, some of the other groups were actually great in finding matching role models as well. Next, I compared the odds ratio of students who had a career interest at the beginning of college between the students who had a role model versus who did not. The data showed a significant impact of role model persistence. And in order to see a more detailed impact of role models, let's view the breakdown of this bar here, which break the have a role model into the different levels we mentioned before. And from here, from left to right, we have no role models, had a role model, but no match, gender match, race and ethnicity match, and then land on both match. We can see here the comparison between have a role model, but did not have any kind of congruence versus no role model. Had such role model actually created a difference? On the contrary, the role models who have some sort of matching in gender or race identity or both had a considerably positive effect on career interest. But the difference among these 3 groups was actually not significant, which proved those students with congruent role models, does not matter which kind, were actually more likely to maintain their career interest in computer science. For example, if a Hispanic female student is having difficulty finding a computer science role model who is also a Hispanic woman, she shouldn't be too discouraged. A female role model from another race and ethnicity or a Hispanic male can still provide a positive and influential impact on her career interest later on. I also analyzed the impact of role models across various demographic groups, especially focused on the intersection between the students' gender and the race identity. The results actually showed that the influence of role model, whether they match the students' gender or race identity or not, remained consistent across all different demographic groups. In other words, no specific gender or race and ethnicity group students would find role models less or more beneficial for their career interest later on. Last but not least, let's move on to the discussion. To conclude, the finding actually underscored the importance of role models in booster computer science career interest, automatically contributing to workforce diversity, which means the schools, organizations, or general communities should actually devise the strategies to provide the students more chance to seek role models who share their identities. For example, medium campaigns that emphasize diversity and highlight the accomplishments of underrepresented individuals in technology, in computer science that can play a significant role. The schools can also provide diverse tech professionals, invite diverse tech professionals or CS professionals to the classrooms or to events, allowing them to share their stories and inspire the next generation of students pursuing a future in computer science. And this concludes my whole presentation. Thank you all very much. And now I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Yiping, for this wonderful presentation. Yeah, any questions from our audience?
Yeah, can you go back to the graph with the error bars on it? Ooh, there we go.
This one here?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
how big are the error bars? Is it?
Actually, even after the immutations, the error bar is still quite large, but this picture actually shows the original data from pics. So the error bar is actually slightly larger, and there are definitely more students like within the group of students who have a role model. The sample size of gender match and both match is actually larger than the role models with only race and ethnicity match. So the role models with race and ethnicity match is significantly larger than the others. And also there are a lot of students who had no role model, but the error bars is still considerably large. But
okay, are they two standard errors or one standard error?
It's the 95 confidence level. So it's from
that's two standard errors.
Two standard errors.
Yes,
okay.
Two standard errors. Yes.
Okay.
Are these predicted probabilities from a logistic regression model?
Yes.
Okay. And what were the control? Is the control in your regression model just the pre-high school CS interest, or did you have any other controls?
Yeah, the only confounding variable to controls are the career interest at the beginning of high school. But when I did the analysis, because we also considered the intersections of genders and race and ethnicities, we used these all as controls, but they turns out to be not different across the different groups. So yeah, the only significant one we used is actually the computer science at the beginning of high school.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Yiping. Gerhard, I'll get the stage to you.
Okay, so I'll introduce our next speaker, Darshan Magar, who's from the Educational Policy Analysis program at the Harvard Grad School of Education. And he will receive his master's degree in a couple of weeks, so congratulations. And he has been a research assistant at the Science Education Department since September last year. He's interested in educational data science, and his research has focused on computer science learning among the pre-college teens. Okay.
Thank you so much, Ting Ting, for the introduction. Today I'll be talking about my research. Let me share this slide. Yeah, today I'll be talking about my research on how early exposure to computer science programming shapes the career interest across gender. So I'm roughly interested in the intersection of computer science and education, but I also like to read a lot of biography and watch interviews. And so this is one of the quotes I came across that's kind of like relevant to my research by Edward Zuckerberg, who's like the father of our alumnus, Mark Zuckerberg, and kind of like shows what he think was important in terms of like Mark's interest in computer science, right? Like exposing him to CS earlier. And this is not in isolated, like it's like a lot of people believe really like exposing their child early to computer science. Codable is like one of the edtech company that specializes in this field. So they believe like you should teach kids to coding as early as possible. And you can see like the second code that shows like where they're teaching some kids as early as 2 years old. They believe like 5 years old is like kind of like the sweet spot, but based on what, right? Like, so, and that's been my question, like not really empirical evidence on this, but more so intuition and general belief or like acceptance in the society. And so these are not like isolated incidents, like there's a lot of like support too. Like I must acknowledge ranging from economic to like political to like educational and social justice angles. And there have been like some research that do show how early computer science career exposure can lead to CS interest, but it's not a shoe-in evidences, right? So, and that's why I wanted to like dig deep in this area and then see like, is there evidence? Is there that shows that it does lead to a long-term career association? But I have to mention that it is not an unfounded idea, right? Like, so a lot of like education philosophy is based on you teach the kids as early as possible. One of the main reason is we have the neuroscience research that shows like our neurons develop much faster when we're early, and that's kind of like is associated with like one of the educational approach to teaching coding as early as possible. In terms of my research, like why exactly? So lots of reasons. The first one, when I started doing literature review, I found like there's not enough like empirical evidence in terms of associating early exposure to CS career. But at the same time, I found usually the term early exposure is associated with onset rather than like duration. So if you look at the literature, they put these two terms together under one umbrella, usually like something like background or early experiences, right? So no clear distinction like about onset and duration. So that's the other reason. Usually for CS career interest, time-related factors, which I'm looking at, are like really explored. Much more research has been done from a socioeconomic perspective, or socio-cognitive, or motivational perspective, right? Like the socioeconomic background of the person, or like motivational factors, or like parental education, that kind of thing. So that's the other angle, like why I feel like this research question was like suitable for me. Plus, like a lot of like research that focus on early exposure concentrate around like short-term benefits, right? Like short-term benefits like improvement in computational thinking or logic or that kind of thing, but not really on how it impacts long-term or it leads to long-term benefits, such as the long-term career association that I'm looking at in my research. And finally, like last nationally representative data set, like PICS is very rare for studies in like early exposure of like CS, and that's the other thing. So it all brought together and was I found a great opportunity for me to like look at the research question using the PICS data set. So the variable of interest for me, my dependent variable career interest, pre-college career interest. My two independent variables in this case are like onset and duration, and I look at like how that's mediated by gender. Self-efficacy and outcome expectation, they came like when I was doing research and we were developing a pathway model, so that kind of like how they mediate like our independent and dependent variable. So this is my research question, a very simplistic version in which like I asked, how does interest in CS differ based on A, onset, B, duration? And both of those are associated with the early exposure of programming to like CS career interest, right? So, and this is the pathway model we come across with based on social cognitive career theory. In this case, it's my research question, but like mediated by self-efficacy and outcome expectation, which we use like different items in our PICS data set to measure. So this one, in terms of like, this is like a more exploratory results, like to kind of like make sure the categories we are researching is not imbalanced. So, and after like long trials and discussion, like the way we decided to categorize the duration, right? Onset is a first exposure, one before the age of 14 or before. The second one is a 15 and after. And that's kind of like coincides with like the middle school, like or the end of middle school. And the data set is like, the total is around 1,200, I think, for those who answer everything. But like you can see like the categories are like fairly balanced. Similarly, like when you look specifically for males and females, more or less like balanced, like, yeah. The second independent variable, which was duration. So that one, like the category we came across, we decided was like less than 1 year and 1 year or more, the second category. And this was also like down to like to balance the two categories in the data set. And on the right is the distribution by gender, because that was important. Like, although like for females, it seems it's slightly more imbalanced compared to the males. So now going how that impacts like our dependent variable. So here I'm looking at the CS career interest, and I'm comparing students who are interested in CS career versus those who are not, and looking at the percentage of that. So the first at the very left hand side is by gender, and you can see like there's a clear difference, like orange referring to female versus male, blue referring to male. Clear differences are in terms of the percentage of males who are interested in CS career interest, almost double. So that's like 3.5 or 8, yeah, more than double versus like female who are interested in CS career interest. On the middle, it's by duration. So we also see like there's roughly 5% differences between people who learned CS for more than 1 year versus those who persisted like less than 1 year. And on the very right, this is the CS career interest, but by onset. So the first category on the red is like before the age of 14 or before, and the green one is age 15 or after, when they first started programming exposure, coding. And you see like not really difference, right? So gender, duration, seems like there's differences. Onset, not really. And that kind of like goes against like some of the quotes we saw earlier. Similarly, so I'm looking here now, the average self-efficacy, and we see like a similar trend to career interest on this one too. For gender and duration, there is like clear differences. As expected, like for gender, like more male, higher for male versus female. And for duration, those who learn 1 year or more, higher for them versus those who persisted less than 1 year, but not really much differences when it came to like onset, like whether they started before 14 or whether they started like after the age of 15. So those kind of like, I guess like shows early onset having not much impact, but like if you dig deep, it does not appear to be the case. Like, so we, again, categorize the duration and onset into 4 different categories to look at from different angle. And this shows that like early onset can have an impact when you look at the duration. So it amplifies the impact of duration, basically, right? So clearly, so here on the y-axis are the CS interest coefficients. So that's like from the odds ratio. And we want to see like whether the differences in coefficients is significant or not. So here, when you stabilize the onset and look at the duration, like clearly duration doesn't make an impact. Similarly for like onset also seems to have an impact, but the only 2 coefficients that have significant differences here are the one between early onset less experience, which is like less than 1 year, versus like early onset in more than 1 year duration, right? So that, like, of course, it does show the impact, large impact of the duration, but at the same time, it seems onset kind of like amplifies that duration. And similar results for looking at the efficacy coefficients. Clearly, like duration clearly has an impact, but it seems like onset, especially the early onset, right? So seems to multiply, or in a way, that the differences that the duration creates. So this is the path model, overall path model. And so by running our regression models, like we found onset does not have significant association with the self-efficacy, but duration does. And so efficacy in turn impact, or like is associated with career interest in 2 different ways. One directly, the other like through one of the factor of our outcome expectation, which is like working with people, right? So so efficacy has like negative relation with working with people, and then that in turn has like negative relation with career interest, which means overall like efficacy has like a positive association with career interest. And this is mirrored when we look at like just the female cohort. So although like the effect a little bit like larger, so the female group kind of like matches the overall SM pathway. And that's really, but that's not really the case for the male. For male, like neither the onset nor the duration is significantly associated with the efficacy. But you do see like the significant association of efficacy with the career interest. So that's kind of like interesting. So in terms of like results, like the conclusion, clearly like more boys were exposed to CS early. and they tend to like persist longer than the girls. And I guess like this kind of like supports a lot of like this literature finding already out there, but from like different angle. The second conclusion is early onset of CS exposure, at least with our data set, has no significant association with long-term CS career interest, right? So, and that goes against like what a lot of like intuition people might have or like belief, right? Like, so that is showed earlier with the quotes, but duration, at least in our case, like at least 1 year in CS was significantly associated with CS career interest, especially for girls, right? Like, so it was very important for girls to like to persist like more than, or to teach them computer science like more than 1 year, right? So and so that's kind of interesting. So it kind of like leads us to believe that like a lot of times when the research talk about early background or early experiences, like that probably is like more talking about the duration rather than the onset in itself, right? So, but people usually confuse that with like onset. So, so it's very important to like separate them and then and do more research on that to come to like a more specific conclusion. And that's kind of like conclude my research. Please ask me if you have any question. Thank you.
A question, Darshan. Oh, sorry, Phil.
Okay. That was great. Thank you, Darshan. Your results that are on the screen right now, how are the results different from your preconceptions, what you thought you were going to find?
Yeah, so when I first started, and then when I was reading the literature and then like reading this course, like I really believed like I was going to see like significant association between the onset specifically with the long-term CS career interest, although it has not been like documented, right? Like in the literature, but like that's kind of like a general perception. And for policymakers or like people like in the tech companies, like in this trail, like trying to teach kids like coding early, like that's their focus, right? Like, okay, it's the onset for leading the charge in terms of exposing CS early. But it appears like it might actually be duration rather than the onset. So that was kind of like what surprised me, I guess. And the other one is like, I thought like I would see similar pathway for both males and females. So, and that's not really the case. Like, it seems like for boys, it did not matter, like that even the duration, as much as it did for the girls, right? Like, so for the girls, like persisting at least 1 year, like teasing them 1 year, like was really, really important. Yeah. So that's the other surprise for me.
And when you went through the research, were there any naysayers in any of the articles, popular articles or research articles that said it's a bad idea or it's useless or it doesn't have any effect of getting kids to do computer science activities early?
Yes. So that was the other reason for me to like, I guess, like do this research. Although like, I guess like overwhelming majority is like in favor, like starting as early as possible. But there's also like pushback against that in terms of like, well, so computer science is like one of the, I guess, like highest early dropout field, right? So it's like if you don't master that timing like properly, then you might actually like discourage a lot of kids who will eventually like pick it up. And there's also the angle of like, well, it takes time away from like other interests or other things that the kids might do. So yeah, and like most of the pushback has really been focused on like there really not being a solid empirical evidence, rather than more so intuition and evidence from later, like not the early kids, but like more so from the course of like college kids. And yeah, so there's definitely like lots of pushback. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the fact that you had those quotes early on about famous people. You know, those anecdotes seem compelling, but as both Zuckerberg and Jobs dropped out of college. So if you want to be successful in CS, should you drop out of college? That would be another conclusion. So I like this approach, and Gerhard and I have used this many times. One of our original papers was college professors, CS college professors often say, don't learn to code in high school because you'll learn all these bad habits, which I have to straighten out in the college course. Better to come in fresh and not have any experience. Some of them say that, some of them say it's helpful. And so one of our early papers looked at that particular issue. Other questions? Let's see. Kelly has her hand up.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. It's really interesting. I have a question about, so your second conclusion on this slide that the early onset exposure has no significant association. You did find though that there's an interaction between early exposure and the duration, right? Am I mistaken, or did I misunderstand that?
So when looking at those two categories, like no interaction, but it's like so we did it like two different ways. Like in the second ways where we make like 4 categories, like using onset and duration. So in that one, it seemed like, of course, like duration is like the major one, but like it seemed like the onset kind of amplified the effect. But like, yeah,
I guess, but the reason for my question is when you initially introduced like how you defined early, or how you defined onset, you said that it's defined as like so you count it as the earliest experience that someone has with coding, regardless of the duration of that experience. Am I correct?
Right, yeah.
So like I wonder if that's because like, so does that mean that if I went to like a workshop that lasted, I don't know, an hour when I was 5 years old, I'm just saying something, that would count the same as if I was like 7 years old and I went to like a summer long like coding camp? Like those two things, like early onset, like would be triggered in the same way in both of those cases?
Yeah, like theoretically, like that would be the case, like with our like fixed data set. Yeah.
Because I guess like I found this plot like interesting, just like the difference in between the yellow bars and all the others. And I wonder if that way of sort of operationalizing like early onset, like might it be better to like define it as the first exposure over a specific length of time so that you avoid, because like you avoid the sort of confounding aspect of like duration and early onset. I don't know if I'm making sense, but like it just seems like those two things should be, those two like scenarios that I described should be in some way counted differently.
Yeah, I mean it does definitely make sense. Like 2 reasons. Like one is like the limitation of the data set we have, but also like how imbalanced like some categories were. Like so that was like a more so like technical decision. The second, I would say, like is like a lot of times like these two are like really like already like categorized like together as like early background, early experiences, like and so like in a way like so this approach kind of like I guess like dissect that without like taking away, I feel, from either one of those like specific categories.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I personally, like I think I would probably like be more happier like if I guess like this was more regression has like more categories, like and that was like sort of like my initial approach, but like the data set was like so imbalanced, like so it turned into more like a classification task. So
I
yeah.
see. Yep. Right. That's great.
Yeah, I had one more question. In this graph, how are the kids who had no exposure, no early or late onset, no experience represented?
Yeah, so these are actually like the odds ratio coefficient, like compared to those categories. So that's like the baseline.
So is that the 0 here or the 1? Where?
Yes, like so that would be 0. So I took it out like for like simplistic reason, like so this is like from the logistic regression model, and so these are the coefficient like compared to the baseline, which is like those like with no.
So the baseline would be 0 here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Great.
Okay, thank you. Great. I think Gerhard will
Yes.
introduce our next speaker.
So we have our third and final presentation of work done by Ree Dresser and Kelly Miller. Kelly has been a member of our group of long-standing. We have done several projects with her. She is a senior lecturer in applied physics in the School of Engineering and Applied Science at Harvard University. She completed her PhD in applied physics from Harvard in 2015. Prior to that, she received a master's in physics from the University of Vermont after completing her undergraduate education at McGill University. Kelly teaches interactive project-based courses in both physics and engineering. She's also a co-founder of Perusal, a collaborative reading platform to get students prepared for class. And Ree Dresser, who is actually giving that presentation, is a fourth-year PhD student in the physics department at Harvard University. Her research is guided by Kelly Miller and Eric Mazur as her advisors. Ree's thesis work focuses on how self and peer evaluation in college-level introductory physics classes impacts students' use of metacognitive physics problem-solving skills. Prior to the start of their PhD program, Ree graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Physics and Mathematics from the University of Oregon. Their passion for teaching led Ree to begin their work in physics education research at Harvard. Ree hopes to become a faculty member after completion of the PhD to continue their work in teaching in physics education research. Take it away, Ree.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to present for you all today. Let me just share screen. Great. So STEM fields are at the forefront of tackling contemporary global issues such as climate change, clean infrastructure development, public health, and food security. Given the increasing significance of STEM within our world, occupations requiring STEM training are growing at twice the rate compared to non-STEM occupations in the United States. Thus, it's really important that we ensure a sufficient portion of the population is effectively educated in STEM. 1/3 of the US population is Black or Hispanic, while only 16% of the STEM workforce is Black or Hispanic. Population projections predict that the US will be majority people of color by 2050. So it's imperative to address underrepresentation in STEM if the US wishes to remain a competitive contributor to advancements in STEM. In this presentation, I will discuss a study Kelly Miller and I completed assessing the role of out-of-school time STEM programs on Black and Hispanic students' STEM career interest. First, I will discuss background literature to motivate our study and then explain our research questions and study findings. So what leads to the disparity in the STEM workforce I showed previously? One driver is what's called the preparation gap. This bar chart shows the percentage of students meeting college readiness benchmarks based on ACT exam scores in 2015. You'll see that African American students, 18% met college readiness benchmarks in math, and 15% met college readiness benchmarks in science. 35% of Hispanic students met benchmarks in math, and 29% met benchmarks in science. When comparing these numbers to the proportion of Asian and white students meeting these benchmarks, it is clear to see that racial and ethnic preparation gaps are apparent. One driver of these preparation gaps is limited resources. In a study of 6 major metropolitan regions in the US, Kotzal found that school districts with majority Black and Hispanic student populations received 40% less money per student on average compared to neighboring school districts with majority white student populations. One example of this can be seen in the Chicago metropolitan area. On the left is a school district where 10% of the student population identifies as URMs, while the rest are white. And in that school district, they were allocated $17,000 per student. On the right, you'll see a school district with 87% URM students, which was only allocated $8,500 per student. The situation in Philadelphia is similar. On the left, a school district with 9% URM student population was given $17,000 per year. And on the right, the school district with 79% URM student population was given $9,000 per year. Similar trends can be seen in Detroit, Milwaukee, Boston, and New York City. These limited resources can lead to a reduction in quality teachers, thus driving the preparation gap we saw in ACT scores. This bar chart shows California schools broken up by percent of URM student population. So on the left is a bar for California schools with less than 30% URM student population. In these schools, 4% of math teachers were identified as underprepared. To the far right are schools with 91 to 100% URM student population. And in those schools, 16% of math teachers were identified as underprepared. Extracurricular STEM programs may provide a chance to narrow these opportunity and preparation gaps across racial and ethnic groups in the US. STEM extracurricular programs can include summer camps, research internships, clubs, competitions, and more. I'll refer to these broadly as STEM programs. Literature has shown that STEM programs can increase students' career interest in STEM. For example, Kitchen and co-authors used a nationally representative sample to study STEM summer programs' impact on students' career interest. They found that students who attended a STEM summer camp had a 1.4 times increase in the odds of having a STEM career interest at the end of high school compared to students who did not attend a STEM summer camp. They also found that students who experienced the real-world relevance of STEM at their summer camp had a 1.8 times increase in the odds of wanting to have a STEM career at the end of high school compared to students who did not attend a STEM summer camp. URM students may benefit further from STEM programs that are specifically geared towards URM student populations. From the literature, I identified program components unique to URM programs. One component is the opportunity for interaction with same-race role models, mentors, and peers. In a literature review by Gladstone and co-authors, they found that STEM role models who identified as underrepresented minorities had a positive impact on all students they mentored, regardless of the student's identity, while non-URM role models did not motivate URM students and were sometimes even found to be demotivating. Another component is opportunity for explicit discussions of underrepresentation. Black girls from a summer program in STEM reported that these discussions of underrepresentation led them to feel a sense of motivation and deeper resolve to pursue their passions in STEM, and led them to recognize what a huge accomplishment it would be to become an engineer as a Black woman. Literature has reported many advantages linked to URM STEM programs. It's been reported that these programs can lead to increased career interests and students becoming exposed to occupations in STEM they hadn't heard of before. It's also been shown to be linked with improved performance in future STEM courses and exams. Programs that collected follow-up data have reported rates of high college attendance, college completion, and STEM majoring. These programs can also lead to improved attitudes, self-assurance, and self-efficacy in STEM, and create a sense of belonging and community within STEM. In summary of the literature reviewed, I've shown that structural racism in the form of underfunded schools can create opportunity gaps, such as disparities in advanced math placement. In a study of a nationally representative data set, it was found that Black and Hispanic students are significantly less likely to be placed in advanced math courses in the 9th grade compared to white students. This opportunity gap can lead to preparation gaps, like what we observed in the ACT exam scores earlier. Ultimately, these preparation gaps can lead to disparities in college admissions and the pursuit of STEM degrees. This can all result in underrepresentation within the STEM workforce. URM STEM programs may be a way to narrow those opportunity and preparation gaps. Given the evidence and the literature, Kelly and I focused on 2 research questions. Is STEM program attendance associated with increased STEM career interest? And does the association depend on whether the STEM program is designed for underrepresented minorities? While the literature supports the positive impact of these URM STEM programs, most reports focus on specific localized programs. To answer our research questions, we were able to use a nationally representative survey dataset from Phil Sadler and Gerhard Sonnert. This allowed us to report on the benefits of URM STEM programs across the nation without the need to focus on just one program. This survey was administered to college freshmen in mandatory English classes in the fall of 2017. On the survey were 33 items covering things such as career plan development, early school science and math experiences, high school background, STEM-related interests, student characteristics, and family characteristics. We did our analysis on a subsample of students who identified as Black, Hispanic, or white. To answer our research question, we built a logistic regression model predicting end of high school STEM career interests. We used controls for beginning of high school STEM career interest, gender, first-generation college status, and math SAT scores. Our predictor variables included a variable representing whether or not students attended a traditional STEM program, by which I mean a program not designed for a specific group of students, or whether students attended a URM STEM program specifically designed for underrepresented minority students. This table shows logistic regression results in odds ratios. So you can see that Black students had 0.76 times the odds of having an interest in a STEM career at the end of high school compared to white students. And this is when controlling for all other variables. However, Hispanic students were shown to have equal odds of having an end of high school STEM career interest when these controls are present. Students identifying as female were about half as likely to have an interest in a STEM career at the end of high school compared to students who did not identify as female. STEM career interest at the beginning of high school was the strongest predictor of end of high school STEM career interest, where those with an interest at the beginning of high school had 8.5 times the odds of having end of high school interest compared to those who did not have an interest in the beginning of high school. First-generation college status was not a significant predictor in this model, looking at end of high school STEM career interest. Students with a 1 standard deviation increase in their math SAT scores had a 1.44 times the odds of having an interest in a STEM career at the end of high school. And then looking into the predictor variables, you can see that students who attended a traditional STEM program had 1.38 times the odds of having a STEM career interest in the end of high school compared to students who did not attend any STEM program. Students who attended a URM STEM program had 2.65 times the odds of having an interest in a STEM career at the end of high school compared to those who did not attend any STEM program. So you can see from the last two columns that both traditional STEM programs and URM STEM programs can increase students' interest in a STEM career at the end of high school when controlling for all of the other variables present. You'll also see that the odds ratio for URM STEM programs is larger than that which we see for the traditional STEM programs. We also built an additional logistic regression model where traditional STEM programs was set as the reference and URM STEM programs was compared directly with traditional STEM programs. In that case, we also saw that URM STEM programs had an odds ratio greater than 1 that was statistically significant. We were able to calculate average adjusted probabilities based on the logistic regression model previously shown. This plot on the vertical axis shows the predicted probability of having a STEM career interest at the end of high school, and the horizontal axis shows each racial and ethnicity group. Green points represent predictions for students who did not attend a STEM program. Blue points are predictions for students who attended a traditional program, and red points are predictions for students who attended a URM STEM program. You'll notice that for Black students who attended no STEM program, they had a 24% probability of being interested in a STEM career at the end of high school when controlling for all other variables in the logistic regression model. Black students who attended a traditional STEM program had a 28% probability of having a STEM career interest at the end of high school. And Black students who attended a URM program had nearly a 40% probability of having a STEM career interest at the end of high school. So you can see that the probability of STEM career interest is much greater when students attend a URM STEM program as compared to traditional programs or no programs. In summary, based on a nationally representative sample, we found that students who attend URM STEM programs are significantly more likely to have a STEM career interest at the end of high school compared to students who do not attend any STEM programs. Our hope for this result is that practitioners and policymakers can justify further funding of URM programs. Future directions could be identifying specific program components that are most impactful within URM STEM programs, and then implementing those types of components across all STEM programs to make them more effective. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Ree. And we're running slightly over time, so I think there can be one last question for Ree, and then we have to fold. So who has a question for Ree?
Well, I can ask a question. In your last graph, one of the surprising results is that for white students in URM programs, the effect is as large, if not larger, than for other students, for Black or Hispanic students. What do you think it is about the URM program where this sort of rising tide lifts all boats? I wouldn't expect that a URM program would make such a difference for white students.
Yeah, that's a good question. So one thing to note is that within the survey, students were just asked, did you attend a STEM program designed for underrepresented minorities? And that could be interpreted in a number of ways because underrepresented groups within STEM are not limited to just specific racial and ethnic groups, but could also be geared towards students who are low income, first-generation college goers, sexual and gender minorities, etc. So I think that can explain why some white students were in that population of attending these types of STEM programs. Mm-hmm. Also, one thing to note within the logistic regression model is it sort of requires that white students experience that same effect to a certain extent, because these odds ratios are calculated when holding race and ethnicity constant. So this is basically like a positive impact that gets applied across all groups because of the way that the probability gets calculated, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And were there any interactions between gender, race, and the effect of traditional or URM programs?
We tested a lot of different interactions, and none of them were significant beyond the p less than 0.001 level.
Okay, so I think I want to thank all of our presenters for their excellent work. And I think I can speak for Phil also when I say that running this research group and seeing the students mature and grow as researchers is one of the more rewarding parts of our jobs. So thank you all. Thank the postdocs. Thank you to the postdocs and everybody who helped in the whole department.
Okay.
Thank you.
And thanks to Gerhard for the lion's share of the work, and for Sue for helping as well. Really impressive.
Thank you, everyone. And I posted in the chat our YouTube channel. You can review this talk once it gets uploaded, but there are all the other seminar talks, most of the other seminar talks from this year on that channel as well. And stay tuned. We will be working hard to put together the next series of SED seminar talks that will start in the fall. So thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thank you very much.